Hello there. So today's lesson, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at an issue to do with rivers based on our unit on raging rivers. But we are also going to be looking at engineering because we spent a bit of time recently looking at hard and soft engineering. And this is going to form the first lesson in a series of lessons which are going to focus on one particular river engineering project. And the engineering project that I've chosen is the largest river engineering project in the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present my screen and I'm going to explain a little bit about how today's lesson is going to work for you. So these videos are being designed for you to be able to complete the work in real time. So what I will do is I will signpost to you exactly what it is that I want you to be doing at various different points during the lesson. You'll need to open up a Google document if you are working in Google Classrooms to be able to complete the tasks that I am going to guide you through. If you've got your exercise books, you're obviously more than welcome to write in there, but please make sure that you take pictures of it if you're working offline to upload that material onto your Google Classroom. So I mentioned that we're going to be looking at a river project, and we're going to be looking at the largest river project in the world. And that river project is a project which is called the Three Gorges Dam Project. Okay, so it goes without saying, it is a project which involves a dam. Now, we've got a target question that we're aiming to achieve by the time we get to the end of this lesson. And that target question is, what is the Three Gorges Dam Project? And how can it prevent flooding and provide energy? So that's our first target question for our first lesson on this Three Gorges Dam project. It's going to span over 2 or 3 lessons, and we're going to be building up our knowledge as we go, almost like, I guess, a set of stairs leading us towards the top of that tower, which is success with regards to the Three Gorges project. Now, in order for you to answer that target question, you're going to need to be able to access the following pieces of success criteria. I'm going to need you to be able to explain what a dam is, because if you're looking at this and thinking, Mr. Kilvert, I've got no idea what a dam is, well, we need to make sure that you do. Once we've done that, we're going to look at 2 aspects of dams. We're going to look at how they can prevent flooding, which is the direct link to some of the stuff that we looked at with hard and soft engineering on rivers. But we're also going to look at it from an energy perspective. It's really important in geography that we make what I call synoptic links. Now, a synoptic link is when you make a link to other areas of geography as you go. And I want us to make some synoptic links to energy. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how it is that we can use a dam to produce energy and electricity that can be used. So the first things first, the first question or the first piece of the success criteria that we need to answer is really simple. It's what is a dam? Now, the vast majority of your work during today's lesson is going to be completed on a table which looks exactly like my one that's up on the screen. Now, there are 3 columns to this table. We've got where is the Three Gorges Dam and what is it? We've got how does it produce energy? And we've got how does it prevent flooding? Now, I said that this lesson was going to work in real time. So I've got a 3-minute timer down here in the bottom right-hand side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press play on that 3-minute timer. When I press play on that 3-minute timer, you guys got 3 minutes to draw out a table which looks exactly like that. Okay, so as soon as that timer starts to go down, you've got 3 minutes. Okay then, superb stuff. So hopefully that's given you enough time to be able to go through and to be able to create the table. What we need to do now though is we need to do the hard work in making sure that we can fill it in. So the first key question that we've got on there is, where is the Three Gorges Dam and what is it? So in order for us to be able to do that, actually what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a trip and we're going to use Google Earth in order to make sure that we can do so. So I've loaded up a Google Earth tab in here so here you can see the world in all of its glory. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type into the search box Three Gorges, and it's going to take us to the Three Gorges Dam scenic area in our location, which you can see just here on Google Earth is in China. Okay, so hopefully my internet speed is going to be able to keep up with this, and you can see us spinning around the area around the Three Gorges Dam. Now you can see a nice little picture of it up here on this screen. Now we can't actually see the dam at the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this opportunity to just zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to zoom out, and if we look not too far away, we should start to see a river appearing in the top left-hand corner. And this river here is the River Yangtze, as it says just there. Now I'm zooming out a little bit further, just to give you an idea of the scale of how far I've zoomed out. These are what you can see here, lots and lots of mountains. And if we go down the Yangtze River, we find our Three Gorges Dam. Now, the reason why I've shown it to you on Google Earth is not just to gain an idea of whereabouts it is in the world, located in China on the Yangtze River, but just to gain an idea of just how big it is in terms of its scale. Now, if I continue to zoom out a little bit, okay, you can see just how big it is. Okay, in fact, it's so big that you would be able to effectively see it from space. Okay, so you can see just how far we're zooming out now, and it is still visible in this particular area of China. Now, I'm going to zoom back in a little bit, okay, and I'm going to get you to notice this that you can see behind the dam. So the Yangtze River here is obviously much smaller than the area behind the dam, and this vast area that we've got behind the dam, and it is vast, it is absolutely huge, is our Yangtze Reservoir. So if we've got the largest man-made structure in the world, it stands to reason that we're probably going to have the largest reservoir in the world. Now, what would be really, really great is if we can start to see some images of this. So let's just have a little look and see if we can do that. We don't want to use Voyager. Apologies, normally they come up straight away, but they haven't in this case. So let's put in everything, and that hopefully might bring up some photographs. No, it doesn't look like it is. Not to worry, okay? We'll perhaps have a look at some images and we'll have a look at some photographs a little bit later, okay? But that at least sets the scene and gives you an idea of where the Three Gorges Dam is in relation to the rest of the world. And it gives you an idea of the scale, and it gives you an idea of the size of it. So what we've got here is we've got our map, which is going to show us the Three Gorges Dam, and you've got the Yangtze River, okay? You can see just how big the Yangtze River is. Here's its source, and it flows all the way through China, eventually making its way out towards the sea in Nanjing, which you can see over here on the estuary. So it's one of the largest rivers in China. Now, not only that, the Three Gorges Dam is located in China. It's situated on the Yangtze River, and the dam itself is the widest structure of any kind in the world. Okay, so it was constructed by the Chinese government, and the reservoir is stretching over 373 miles. Okay, and I showed you that on Google Earth. So it's massive and it is visible from space. Okay, so that gives you an idea of scale, gives you an idea of size of this particular project. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you a quick video clip. This video clip is going to give us a brief tour of the Three Gorges Dam. Now, one of the things that we're going to look at in the lessons upcoming is going to be looking at the positives and negatives of the dam as a structure. And if we're going to do that, we've got to be really, really conscious of the sources that we're looking at. Now, in this case, the source comes from a Chinese news agency. We have to be a little bit careful with that because we know that the Chinese government heavily controls the television and controls the press. But let's have a little look at our tour of the Three Gorges Dam, just to give you a sense of its scale and what it looks like.
The Three Gorges Dam is the world's largest hydroelectricity project, the world's largest hydropower station, and a massive water control project that has made a huge difference to navigation in the region.
I'm sitting right now is as high as the highest point of the Three Gorges Dam, 185 meters. The water in this basin behind me reaches a height of 175 meters. And even though we can't see a lot of it today, I'll describe to you guys how vast and how wide this dam actually is. From this point to the other point of the upstream is 2,309 meters wide. This water and the water downstream has a difference of 100 meters. Can you imagine an amount of water that high, even as high as the Statue of Liberty in New York, what kind of ability it has to control floodings and generate power? It's no wonder that this enormous construction behind me earns its title of biggest standalone architectural construction in the world.
Like a giant door, the Three Gorges Dam locks the exit of the Three Gorges of the Yangtze River. The rapidly running water is retained in an enormous reservoir, 600 kilometers in length and 175 meters above the river. Tourists from every country of the world come to see the grand Three Gorges Dam.
Is this your first time to visit the Three Gorges?
Yes, it is.
Okay, what are your feelings? What is your sympathy towards this place?
Well, I know where you're going.
No, I have
no agenda.
totally no intentions,
No,
no
I
agenda
think
whatsoever.
it's a tremendous project, and
Okay.
I think they needed to do it because they have you had all the flooding issues, and you have a tremendous need for power in China. I mean, it's a huge country, and I think we shouldn't judge what anybody else does in their own country.
Are you an engineer? Are you, from a professional point of view, interested in this place at all? Are you an engineer? Well, you were before. What's next for you professionally? Are you still doing things with engineering? Retired. Okay.
3 sections of the Three Gorges Dam are open to tourists, but you need to walk on top of the dam to see how huge it really is.
我现在获得了特批，我一会儿可以去一个普通的游客没法去的地方。那个地方是哪儿呢？是大坝的坝底。
The Three Gorges Dam is obviously not only used to generate electricity, it's also used to control the river and to control it from flooding. Now here are 23 floodgates, which are all massive in size. And you must be wondering how big the water basin on the upper end of the dam might be. It houses an amount of 20 million cubic meters, which is obviously an incredible amount. It's hard to imagine.
Okay, so hopefully that gives you a sense of scale and it gives you a sense of perspective on what the Three Gorges Dam looks like in the first place. Now, he kind of starts to answer some of our questions in terms of how it produces energy and how it prevents flooding. But at this point in time, I'm not interested in that because what we're doing is we're building up our knowledge from the ground upwards. So the first column that I want you to complete is this one. It says, where is the Three Gorges Dam? And what is it? Okay, so bear in mind some of the things that I've told you here about it being situated in China on the Yangtze River, the fact that it's visible from space, okay, and what we've just seen in the video and how it works. I've put a countdown timer up here on the board, which is going to go for 4 minutes. So what I would like you guys to do is to spend the 4 minutes from when that countdown timer starts, seeing if you can complete the first column in that box. Okay, now remember, you can always pause the video. You can always rewind it if you need that little bit more time. Away Okay, superb stuff, guys. Okay, time's up. So hopefully we should have that first column filled out on our sheet, which looks at where the Three Gorges Dam is and what it is. Let's move on then. Let's see if we can start to look at how it produces electricity in the first instance. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a little video which is going to guide us through that process. Then I'll talk you through how it produces electricity. Remember, again, you can stop, pause, and rewind at any time if there are things that you need to make sure that you can understand. Let's have a little look at how it produces electricity.
Hydropower. Hydropower, or hydroelectricity, refers to the conversion of energy from flowing water into electricity. It is considered a renewable energy source because the water cycle is constantly renewed by the sun. One of the first uses of hydroenergy was for mechanical milling, such as grinding grains. But today, modern hydro plants produce electricity.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause that a little bit. So what you can see there from the first snippet of the video clip is almost like a water mill. So that's the most simple form of how we can produce electricity from water. Now we call it hydropower or hydroelectric power. Now you'll remember from looking at the hydrological cycle that that's all about water. Let's see if we can explore a bit more.
Electricity using turbines and generators. The mechanical energy created by moving water spins rotors on a turbine.
Okay, so what we've got then is our first stage here. We've got the moving water that comes from the river through the dam, turns the turbine. Let's see what happens once it turns that turbine.
This turbine is connected to an electromagnetic generator, which produces electricity when the turbine spins.
Okay, so as that turbine spins, it then starts to produce that electricity and it starts to produce that energy.
Two main types of hydroelectricity production: dams and run-of-river. Hydro dams utilize the potential energy from dammed water to produce electricity. A dam is a large barrier constructed to raise the level of water and control its flow.
Okay, so what we can see here in the diagram is the water coming down into the dam, and as it comes down into the dam, it hits this turbine and it starts to generate electricity. So we're using the natural flow of water through gravity.
The elevation created by the dam creates gravitational force for turning the turbine when water is released. Some dams also contain an additional reservoir at their base where water is stored to be pumped to the higher reservoir for release when electricity is in demand. This is referred to as pumped storage hydro. The second form of hydroelectricity production is run-of-river hydro. Run-of-river still uses turbines and generators, but relies on natural water flow rates of rivers, diverting just a portion of the water through turbines.
Okay, I'm going to pause that there because we don't really need to know about run-of-river ways of turning turbines at this stage. Because our question is, how do dams produce electricity? So to run a quick summary of what we've seen there, we can see it in this diagram in the bottom right-hand side. As water flows through the dam, okay, and as it goes down here from the reservoir, it collects speed, and as it collects speed, it turns this turbine. What that turbine does is it then turns a generator which generates electricity. And we call that hydroelectric power, or HEP. Remember, hydro meaning water, electric because that's the energy that we're getting from it, and power because the whole thing is power. Okay. Now, what's worth remembering is, and this will be something which will come into our positives and negatives when we start to explore it with regard to the dam, is it's a renewable energy source. And that's because the water cycle never ends. There's always going to be water within the system in order to be able to drive it. Obviously, if it doesn't rain for a long period of time, that might reduce the amount of energy that you can get. But effectively, it's renewable. It's not using fossil fuels. So our next column is, how does it produce energy? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to have another look through this slide, which I put up here on the board. I'm going to put a 3-minute timer on in this instance, and I'd like you to complete that column in your table, which says, how does it produce energy? Okay, so use that information that you've got in front of you and tell me how it produces the energy. Excellent. Hopefully that's given you the time that you need in order to be able to complete the second column that we've got on our table. So what we need to do now is we need to move on to that final column, okay? And the final column is how it is that dams can reduce flooding. So I'm going to hand you over to another video clip and let's have a little look. Now, just bear in mind that this, I know we're talking about a dam in China. This video clip talks about dams in Australia. However, the process of how a dam reduces flooding is still the same. So let's have a look.
Southeast Queenslanders depend on the region's dams for safe and reliable drinking water. Dams also supply water for irrigation and areas for recreation. 3 of SEQ Water's dams, Wivenhoe, Somerset and North Pine, have gates which allow us to control the flow of water through the dam. The gates are large steel barriers that we can open to release water and control the flow.
Okay, so here we've got the basics, okay? If you have a little look at this diagram here, you can see that you've got those gates that run along the dam. Now, if there's a time when there's lots of precipitation, lots of rainfall, that means that the river may flood further downstream, what you can do is you can start to close up those gates to reduce the amount of water that's flowing into the river. And if you can reduce the amount of water that's flowing into the river, you can reduce the amount of potential flooding that you've got further downstream.
Dams can't store all the water that flows into them. Flood mitigation happens when the flood water released through the dam gates is less than the rate of water flowing into the dam from the catchment and from rainfall. The dam temporarily stores some flood water, which was...
Okay, and I'm just going to pause it there because you can see here this reservoir filling up where you've got this rain and precipitation. Okay, that reservoir can then be used as a way of storing that flood water. And you can use that flood water in lots of different ways. You can use it for irrigating crops or watering crops. You could use it for activities, for leisure that people use reservoirs for. You know, even if you go on the Three Gorges Dam, you can take cruises down those gorges, okay? So there are lots of things that it can be used for. So just to recap then, you've got gates which can control the amount of water that flows through the reservoir into the river. If the gates close, this reduces the amount of water downstream, which can reduce the amount of flooding. So let's have a look at our third column then. It says, how does this prevent flooding? Again, I've got a 3-minute timer up here for you to go for. What I would like you to do is to use that 3 minutes and the slide that you've got in front of you to see if you can tell me and tell yourself how it is that dams reduce the amount of flooding. Okay, or we're just ticking down the last couple of minutes or last couple of seconds. And hopefully we've got an idea of how it can reduce flooding. Okay, so let's refer back to our objectives for today. So we were looking at the Three Gorges Dam Project. We need to answer this target question, which says, what is the Three Gorges Dam Project and how can it prevent flooding and provide energy? We need to tick off these three things on the success criteria, explain what a dam is, explain how a dam can prevent flooding, and explain how a dam can produce energy. Okay, so we should be at the stage where we can do this now. So what we're going to do is we're going to answer this target question. So write this target question down as your question that you're answering. What is the Three Gorges Dam Project and how can it prevent flooding and provide energy? And what I would like you guys to do is to jot down for me, using these sentence starters, your answer to that question. So start it off with a dam is and tell me what a dam is in the first place. Okay, start to use examples. So say the Three Gorges Dam can be found in, and give me that place knowledge that you've already gained. Then give me some sentences to explain how it can prevent flooding and do the same for how it can produce energy. And ultimately, what I would like you guys to be able to do is to be able to use connectives and keywords all the way. Now, in terms of time for this, okay, you may need a little bit longer than this, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert a timer. And the timer that I'm going to insert in this instance is going to be a 5-minute timer. And what I would like you guys to do is use that 5 minutes in order to be able to complete that particular task. Okay, the last thing that we will do once we've done that is we will just go back and we will have a little look at we'll have a little look at the question, and we'll look at my model answer to that particular question. Okay, looks like I can't get a timer in at this point in time, but that's absolutely fine. What I'll do is I will time 5 minutes on my watch and I will let you know when that 5 minutes is up. Okay, one and all. Now, you may need a little bit more time with that. If you do need a little bit more time with that, by all means, take it. Click pause now so that you can still see that screen in front of you. And give yourself that time to be able to complete it properly. What I'd like us to do now, though, is I'd like us to look at my answer to the question. And I want us to look at my answer to the question in reference to the success criteria. So I needed to explain what a dam is. I needed to explain how a dam could prevent flooding. And I needed to explain how a dam could produce energy. So here's my response. A dam is a barrier which traps water flowing down a river, forming a large lake called a reservoir behind it. Three Gorges Dam can be found in China on the river Yangtze. It's the largest man-made structure on the planet, and it can even, that should say, be seen from space. The dam can be used to prevent flooding as water is trapped in the reservoir and the gates control the amount of water that flows downstream. It can also produce renewable energy as the water turns turbines, which means that electricity is generated. We call this hydroelectric power, or HEP. So let's have a look at the success criteria. The first thing that I wanted you to do is to be able to explain what a dam is. And you can see where I've highlighted in red is where I'm hitting that on the success criteria. I've said a dam is a barrier which traps water flowing down a river, forming a large lake behind it. Second point on my success criteria is to be able to explain how a dam can prevent flooding. And I've highlighted that in green. So a dam can be used to prevent flooding as water is trapped in the reservoir and the gates control the amount of water that flows downstream. That's my explanation of how the dam can prevent flooding. And then finally, I needed to explain how a dam can produce energy. And what I've said here is that it turns turbines, which means that, which is a connective word, which is always great when I'm using explanation, electricity is generated. And that's where I'm ticking off my success criteria. What I would urge you to do now is I'd urge you to pause the video and I'd urge you to look at your answer to the question and see if there's anything that you can restructure or rewrite based on my model answer to that question. Because let's face it, we have success criteria so that we're guided towards success. But how can you achieve success until you know what success looks like with the task? Okay, so from my perspective, that's all from me for this week. This is the first lesson in a series of lessons, which will look at the Three Gorges Dam. That gives you a flavour of what the Three Gorges Dam is. As we start to move forward into our next lesson, we'll begin by looking at some of the advantages and disadvantages of a large dam project such as this one. If you've got any questions, please feel free to comment on Google Classrooms or email me directly. Have a good week. Bye.